So we're here in Anaheim at the NAMM convention. And
Another NAMM.
Another NAMM.
Yes.
Another one and another one. So we're here with Vernon Reid, legendary guitar player from Living Colour, and so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me.
So
it's great.
Are you still touring with Living Colour from time?
Playing with Living Colour, where we have a new record that's coming out this year, later on this year, called Shade. Yeah. And we've been, it's been delayed for a little while, but it's definitely coming out this year.
So you guys started out, when was that?
Late 80s. I started the band in 1984. I was a child, I was 12.
Wow, you were 12 back then? Or?
Yeah, well, I was 12. I was 12 at one time, but maybe not then. Anyway, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the band started and what you're trying to do?
We don't have enough time, but I will just say this. I started out playing in funk and R&B bands. I discovered jazz fusion and jazz fusion, straight ahead jazz and avant-garde jazz almost at the same time. Yeah. And they all kind of affected me, especially freeform jazz. I started playing with this amazing drummer named Ronald Shannon Jackson. But I'd heard Santana, I'd heard Hendrix, I'd heard John McLaughlin, all that stuff, and then I heard punk and the Bad Brains and the Sex Pistols and the Clash. Yeah. I'm wildly skipping through everything. Yeah. I also came up through reggae music and ska and all of that sort of stuff. And I'd been playing with this band, the Decoding Society, which was Ronald Shannon Jackson, the drummer. He played with Ornette Coleman, who was very influenced by Ornette Coleman's music, but he had his own thing, incorporated blues, rock, Eastern mysticism, all kinds of different things. Yeah. And when I left that band, I started playing around in New York with a trio, but I'd been writing songs. When I was in my high school years, I met a lot of great musicians. One of them was a keyboard player named Raymond Jones. He actually plays on the song Good Times by Chic, which is one of the songs that's credited with the birth of modern hip hop. Mm-hmm. This friend of mine from high school actually plays the Rhodes part. He turned me on to Peter Gabriel. He turned me on to all kinds of stuff. We tried to do a band. The band fell apart. I went and did this thing with Shannon. When I started playing on my own, I started writing songs. I started also doing kind of instrumental things, and then one thing, it started to become more rock-oriented because that was the music. Throughout all the different music that I'd played, I mean, rock and roll was always a strong thread. Yeah. And one thing led to another. We started to gain a local following, and that caught the attention of Mick Jagger, and Mick Jagger came and saw us, and then he produced 2 tracks, and then we'd been making demos for different companies, and nobody was taking it, and then Mick Jagger got involved, and then suddenly we were on our way, and then eventually a song Cult of Personality was released as a single and a video, and so it went from this really obscure, odd thing, and it just gradually, by degrees, became what people know of. Yeah.
So did you kind of expect, I mean, Cult of Personality was massive. Did you kind of expect that, or did it come as a surprise?
It was, I knew that we were doing something very different than what was currently happening. Like we were doing something that wasn't really on the radio. It was very different. It was, I mean, we were kind of like a hard rock band that came up through a punk sensibility. So we were kind of odd even in the crowd of bands, but that also was something, information that was part of the DNA of the band. You know? So the DNA of the band had funk, it had the alternative, it had metal, it had all of that was in there. That country and west, it had all kinds of stuff. So like the first record, there's a song Cult of Personalities on that record, but there's a cover of a Talking Heads thing because Talking Heads was part of the conversation that we were kind of in with CBGBs and what have you. Even though Talking Heads was a few years before, that music had a big effect, on me and on the band. Yeah. It was part of the downtown thing. There's Broken Hearts, which is like a country and western, which is almost an experiment. I wanted, let's do a hip hop beat, but with country and western sounds on top. But it was also very personal because I was breaking up with my girlfriend in the time of making this record. So it was, there were social things like a Funny Vibe. Funny Vibe was like the first, really the first real Living Colour song. Yeah. But the song I Want to Know was, I mentioned Raymond Jones. When we tried to do a band, I wrote that song really before Living Color even happened, but that was a song I played with Raymond. So there were all these different things, and Glamour Boys is, every song it's really like a diary.
Yeah.
It's a diary of 4 African American young men in New York, in America. It was really, every song comes from an incident or a story or a thing that happened, more or less. So, yeah. So it was kind of weird. It was like, who knew? We just were chasing this thing. The one thing is that we were determined to do what we wanted to do, which is pretty much the rock and roll attitude.
Yeah.
It's a rock and roll attitude. You don't tell me, and this is something that you can't tell me what to do or who to be.
Yeah.
And that was a funny thing, because it also, I thought of rock that way, but then, of course you get into it and then there are all kind of rules. So it's like, I thought there were no rules. I thought there were no rules.
It's funny because even in your guitar playing, I always sense that, that there are no rules. I mean, you can both be like, super technical and precise, but also have this kind of reckless, screw it all kind of attitude.
Yeah, because I was listening to both Sonny Sharrock and John McLaughlin. Yeah. So both of those ways of thinking, totally free form and very cathartic, expressive part, that, like the Sonny Sharrock, because Sonny Sharrock could also be incredibly precise, but also John McLaughlin, there's a crossover because he could be completely free in his playing as well, as precise as he is. So, those are things. And also, I have to mention, one of my influences was a local guitarist named Arthur Rames. He was a multi-instrumentalist. Okay. He played saxophone, he played guitar, he played piano. And he was a big influence. And he had passed on really after Vivid had come out.
Okay.
But I remember seeing him. He played at my high school, and we used to see him in Prospect Park, and he had this band. It was like a fusion band that was like a trio, but like the Mahavishnu Orchestra as 3 people.
Oh,
it
cool.
was completely crazy, completely sane. It was completely amazing. So all of this stuff, the things I saw, the things I experienced, the things I actually heard, the records I was listening to, the dream that we all had of doing it, all of those things were part of it. We used to play locally, and Jaco Pastorius used to come to our shows.
Oh, cool.
And Jaco, I remember one time we played a show at this 55 Grand Street bar, and it was really, really, really much too loud for the room. And Jaco came up after the show and said, "Vern, that was great. You should play louder." And he just had that wild-eyed enthusiasm, and it was very. It was a very special time. There were a lot of different things happening in music, things that were happening in electronic music, things that were happening in rock and roll, things that were in hip hop was emerging. I played on the first Public Enemy record, Yo Bum Rush the Show, and I feel very honored and very proud to have been part of that band's history. So it's a lot of different things. A lot of different things came together.
Thanks so much for taking the time, both for the interview
and
the tour.
Thank you for your amazing products, these pedals, these sounds. The ability to make odd, unusual, unique sounds is a big part of how I make music. And TC Electronics is among the leaders of excellent, weird shit.
Thanks so much. And on that note.
On that note.
Yeah.